Gaddy, and I'm here to talk to you about my poet, Alice Walker. Here's a little bit of background history about her. She was born on February 9th in Eden, Georgia. She worked as a social worker. She was a teacher and a lecturer. She was part of the 1960s civil rights movement in Mississippi, and she was known for her best short stories, such as The Color Purple, which a lot of you, some of you should have heard about. The Temple of My Father, Processing the Secret of Joy, and By the Light of My Father's Smiles. All of them being written in 1982. One of the most admirable African American writers working today still. She bases a lot of her writing and poetry off of her personal lifestyle and what she grew up around. She grew up in a violent and racism, and her family's poverty reflected her writing, explaining what the life was like for her, what she grew up around, and what she had to go through around her family and her personal lifestyle to make things better for her and finding ways to create success in her life. The people she grew up with during her college careers made her interested and more talented and creative in writing and becoming a poet. Her poems appeared in different types of volumes of poetry. She had a lot of poems that were well published and well written and received many awards. And she continues to still write poetry and still reflect on her personal lifestyle today, making things better. And explain to us a background history she grew up in, as well as having others that are out there still trying to reach their goals and to either becoming a poetry or a writer. Her senior year, she was suffering extreme depression and considering she could have been pregnant, and she had wrote several poems explaining her lifestyle, and how she grew up around that, and the things she had to go through, and to finding ways to still create poetry and still create writing throughout her lifestyle and making things better, as well as going through the civil rights and violent racism in her life. She felt like killing herself at times and committing suicide, and she explained that really well through her poetry. Not as many short stories, but in many of her poetry, she explained the lifestyle of killing herself and what she went through of being pregnant. She had friends to help her get an abortion, and while she was recovering, she wrote a nice short story called "To Hell with the Dying," pretty much based off of what she went through and the things she had to go through into making her success and lifestyle much better. The story "To Hell with Dying" was pretty much about a little girl summoned with the rest of her siblings. Mr. Sweet, threatening to die, was a neighbor of the narrator. Described the little girl and her brother that loved Mr. Sweet and wanted to do nothing but take care of him and keep his name in their prayers every day, because they knew he only had a little chance of dying before his time was over. They did not care about his personality or lifestyle. Whenever the children get summoned, Mr. Sweet gets close to dying. His father would always say, "To hell with the dying," which is a phrase towards the narrator and towards Mr. Sweet, that to keep living your life and don't worry about dying. It's going to come sometime soon. Sometime soon in your life, you just got to keep growing and keep making things better. The children were there to comfort Mr. Sweet and be there as much as they can before he dies. They would have revived him after time, finding ways to bring him back to life when the doctor would give up hope several times. And throughout the story, the doctor did give up hope, making it seem that there was no way, there was no chance of reviving him and making him come back. But the children were always there to comfort him and always there to bring him back to life. Years later, the narrator is now in graduate school, notices another summon, and tries to fly back to Mr. Sweet and bring him the good message. Now he's being 90 years old, but came too late, and the good news passed him. All of a sudden, he passed away, and the good news was left on the table still. Alice Walker, she's known in the first editions of many other American writers and women writers. She participated in the civil rights movement in 1965, going from door to door encouraging the voting registration, which is very big and very huge in the world today. She found time to write an essay about the civil rights movement and what it was and how good it was and what she went through, and soon offered a teaching job at Jackson State University. There she had published her first novel, The Third of Grange Copeland. Alice Walker was a very young black woman, African-American woman, growing up in the times of hard, violent racism, civil rights movement, and still finding ways to create success in her life. Another one of her short stories, The Flowers, which is a short story that is in our literature books, is about a young girl called Maya. She's happy about her childhood and doesn't look beyond what she is and how she lives. At her family's cabin where everybody gathers from dinner, she decides to explore the woods with her mother and float off to search for new flowers. The search led her to a mysterious, gloomy, and dumped cave that was completely silenced. Noticed a man been lynched and beaten real bad, lays her flowers and released her youthfulness to the old man, and noticing the racial violence that's been happening in Georgia. I mean, this short story just gives us a clue on what Alice Walker was talking about and what she really talked about in her short stories. I mean, she really didn't use her name or the person in the short stories, but she created short stories to create ways to explaining her personal life by using other characters to evaluate her life and what she went through. Her short stories are mostly based off her background and the environment she grew up in, which caused her to be more creative and talented with her writing. She seemed to always try to make things right when they seemed wrong in her lifetime, and she was a very young, talented woman.